I recently came across an excerpt from Dragon's Den, a British TV series in which entrepreneurs pitch their ideas to professional investors. In this particular episode, the founders of a fractional art ownership startup proposed their business model to investors, unsuccessfully. None of the so-called dragons wanted to invest in the company. Given that Epsilon ArtShare offers a new way to invest in fine art that also incorporates fractional ownership, I wanted to look at why these experienced investors didn't believe in the model they saw, and how Epsilon ArtShare is different. Let's have a look at some extracts.
We have created a place where anyone can invest in art and support artists' careers with as little as a $5. So how do we do that? It's pretty simple. We sell shares of artworks. So we have a primary market where you can buy shares of artworks directly from artists and galleries, and a secondary market when you can trade those shares with other users.
So basically you're democratizing art ownership.
That's
Yes. Correct.
The Epsilon ArtShare app also offers interests, or shares, in artworks for sale. However, we aren't democratizing art ownership. What we democratize is art investment. To own an artwork that's worth, say, $5 million, you need to be able to pay $5 million to call it yours and take it home. Of course, that's art ownership. Purchasing an item and investing in it are two different things on Epsilon ArtShare. This will become more apparent as we break down the Dragon's Den episode.
It's almost like crowdfunding art. So does it work like crowdfunding in as much as it has to reach a certain price for it to become
targets, yes.
sold? Yes. Mm-hmm. So the artist places it onto the website, enough people say, yep, we want to buy that, and then you take that and say, right, that's now available for placing out for rental.
That sounds
okay.
We often hear that our business model is also like crowdfunding for art. But that's not true. At Epsilon ArtShare, we buy artworks from collectors at advantageous prices and then list them for sale on the app at their current market value. Users can clearly see how much we paid for each item and the minimum price we're selling it for. They can then invest any amount they wish in the item based on its cost price. When the item sells, they receive their investment back plus their share of the proceeds earned from the sale. How many users do or don't invest in an item has no effect on its sale price. An artwork on the app can sell even if no one's invested in it at all. Conversely, a user can buy up all the shares in one artwork, but they haven't purchased it. Instead, they've significantly invested or partnered in the sale of it. Therefore, investing in the sale of artworks on Epsilon ArtShare is completely different to a crowdfunding model.
Where do you make your money? Where are your touch points of cash?
We get 10 to 25% of commission on the primary sale, so the first time that the artist sells.
This is an important part of this video that highlights how Epsilon ArtShare is different to other companies experimenting with fractional art ownership. In all the fractional art ownership business models we've seen, users invest in artworks based on their current market value, and the platform makes a commission on that. This is a speculative style of investing that only makes money if the item's market value increases significantly over time. Let's say a friend of yours bought an artwork from a big auction house for $100,000, including the buyer premium. This friend invites you to invest $50,000 to own 50% of it, and when you sell the artwork one day, you'll both share the profit. The only way you'll make money is if the item rises in value enough for you and your friend to sell it and receive a net amount higher than $100,000. This can take years, if it happens at all, because your friend was recently the highest bidder for that item in the current market. You're left speculating and waiting on the future value of the artwork. Now, let's say an art dealer believes an artwork is likely to sell at auction today for $100,000, including the buyer premium, and manages to buy the piece directly from the collector for $80,000. The dealer invites you to invest $40,000 in the artwork to own 50% of it, and then offers it for sale right away at its market value of $100,000. And you two will split the profits when the artwork sells. This is art dealing, not art speculation. When a user invests in an item on Epsilon ArtShare, the app doesn't make any profits. We only make money when the items sell to collectors. All the items listed in our collection were purchased at below their market price and are now offered for sale at their current market value. Our users are investing based on the cost price that's lower than the market price, essentially becoming art dealers or partners in the sale of the item. Think about the thousands of items that sell at auction every day. Every object that sells earns the auction house a comfortable commission, but not every item will prove to be a good investment for the buyer over the long term. Far from it. It's much easier to successfully invest in art if you're essentially sharing the auction house's commission than if you're speculating on art as a collector.
I've got more chance of taking a pin on the stock exchange and knowing that I can always turn my money into cash.
Yes.
Here, you could be locked in forever.
I fully agree with this, which is why we've done something about it. What happens if you invest in an artwork on Epsilon ArtShare and the artwork doesn't sell for a long time? Every item available for investment in our collection is composed of interests that are always worth $1 each. Let's say we purchase an item for $20,000 and list it for sale at a minimum selling price of $24,000. The item would automatically be composed of 20,000 interests at $1 each, not 24,000 interests. Remember, our users invest based on the cost price, not the selling price. If you invest, say, $100 in this item, you're essentially purchasing 100 interests from the app and allocating those interests to that artwork that you want to invest in. You can always reallocate your investment or part of it to any other item in the collection, provided there are still interests available in that second item. For example, today you invest in an antique. Later on, you realize that whiskey is selling well on the app. You can simply move your investment from the antique to one or more bottles of whiskey. After you've invested in an item, if you want to turn your investment back into cash, you can always offer your interest for sale to other users on the app at any price you like. But why would someone want to purchase your interests? Well, let's say you want to exit an investment as soon as possible. You can always offer your interest to other users at, let's say, 95 cents per interest. That's 5% cheaper than Epsilon ArtShare's price of $1 per interest. Another user can buy your cheaper interests and either keep them where they are or reallocate them to a different item that they prefer to invest in. In other words, if Epsilon ArtShare becomes a widely used app for art investment, those investments become a liquid process in which you can get your money back, or most of it, in a matter of days. That is something practically unheard of in the art business. It usually takes a long time to sell an artwork, even if it's a hot item that collectors are willing to fight for. On Epsilon ArtShare, you're not locked in thanks to these options.
Put it this way, if I buy a piece of art, I buy it for myself. What I don't want is to put money into a website and I may get a £10 or £50 a year dividend.
I agree.
Yes. You agree?
I agree. On your position, you're a very wealthy person that likes art.
No. I am putting myself in the little guy who works very hard for their money. Mm-hmm. You get involved in it, you think you're going to make money, and you end up, you can't get out.
Of course, investing users won't want to put money in an item without being able to get out. We just showed you how Epsilon ArtShare has a way around that. But now, I want to talk about the 10 or 50 pound dividend and the difference between what's true for a wealthy person versus the small guy. What's important about Epsilon ArtShare is not so much that you can invest small amounts, although that's great for many people. It's more that the investment is based on art dealing rather than speculation. Purely from an investment point of view, Epsilon ArtShare makes as much sense to an ultra-wealthy investor as it does to anyone else. A wealthy investor could choose to invest $1 million in a Picasso on Epsilon ArtShare rather than buy it outright at $1.2 million, even if they could afford to. Why? Because they may not be interested in speculating on the future value of that piece and prefer to simply invest in the current sale of it, like an art dealer.
If you had come here and said, we have an opportunity to buy the art 50% cheaper, it would normally sell for, and we would then, at the right time, put that piece of art in an auction and make a profit, that would make some sense.
That's art dealing.
That's
Yes,
how
art.
it exists.
Yes.
What the professional investor suggested here is exactly what Epsilon ArtShare does. However, there is a small difference. Instead of putting the artwork for sale at an auction house, as the investor said, Epsilon ArtShare is the auction house. When an item sells to a collector, what we share with the users who invested in it is essentially the commission an auction house would make. As I mentioned, we source our items directly from collectors before they consign them to another auction house. When purchasing important artworks from collectors, it's nearly impossible to negotiate prices lower than the current market value. Instead, we offer to pay the collector the amount that the piece would likely sell for at auction now, minus the auction house's commission. What the seller gets out of it is an immediate guaranteed sale with fast turnaround without taking the risk of having the object not sell at auction or sell for a price that's lower than expected. In cases like this, there's no room for extra profits. The investment method only works if the app also operates as the auction house and doesn't involve other auction houses. Therefore, Epsilon ArtShare needs to function successfully as an auction house to be a successful investment platform. This is what we're working hard to achieve.
You guys are no way experienced to run a business like this in the art world, because that's not where you're at.
That is correct. Sourcing the right museum quality pieces at the right price requires significant experience and numerous contacts. That's why we have important industry specialists and scholars from across the world on our board. Our company shareholders are well-connected auctioneers, art dealers and experts, and our authentication procedures are both professional and rigorous. Regardless of that, in the unlikely event that users invest in a piece that's found to have issues later on, our users would simply reallocate their investments to another piece at no charge. It is possible for Epsilon ArtShare to become stuck with an item, but our users are never stuck.
And we can take as little as 10% commission and make sure that all the rest of the money is going to the artist. At the moment, an artist cannot create enough art for everyone, and they cannot make affordable art for all the people who want to acquire art, because that would destroy their value. So the idea is...
I understand that, and that's a really nice, it's a very nice speech.
At Epsilon ArtShare, our listings of contemporary artworks that are available for investment will remain very limited. That's because contemporary art is generally a riskier asset than important antiques or works by renowned artists with decades of successful auction sales. Put simply, we focus on the safest segment of the art market, try to earn the equivalent of an auction house's commission on the sale of each artwork, and share those commissions with the users who invested in our collection, which then gives us the capital to source more artworks.
In fact, what you said when you came in was, you're the only live platform. That's because the rest of them have all come and gone. That's a really worrying statement to make.
We've already pointed out how seemingly small variations in business models can make a fundamental difference, such as investment based on the cost price rather than the market price, and how items are sourced and sold. Those distinctions distance us from other fractional art ownership companies. Not only is our model different to every other fractional art investment company that we're aware of, but that side of the business is not the driving force of what we do.
The main problem I have with your business is that you put too much value in the fact that people think, I love that art, I'd love to buy a bit of it. But when it comes down to it, I'm not so sure that those people would just put that money in that art as a fractional ownership, not know if it's going to ever be rented out and get dividends, or not know if they can actually get out of that.
Although I understand the romanticism of owning, say, 1% of a Picasso, I agree that it doesn't make financial sense to invest in an item just because you love it. When someone owns a percentage or a fraction of a piece of art, they can't bring that piece home. They can't enjoy the prestige and appreciation of owning the item exclusively, which is part of what inspires collectors to buy pieces. The overwhelming benefit of fractional art ownership is purely financial. It's an investment that needs to compete on a numbers level with the stock market and other investment avenues. Despite what some people think, this is difficult to achieve through art. When you look at certain indexes, they might tell you that prices for a particular artist have climbed an impressive 20% across a single year. But what the indexes don't say is that if you have purchased an artwork at auction for $100,000 a year ago, and you sell it at auction for $120,000 today, then you have actually lost money. Because after deducting the buyer premium and the seller's commission that the auction house keeps, you will only receive around $90,000. On top of that, there are shipping costs, insurance, storage, framing fees, possible art consultant salaries, and so on. So what looks like a 20% increase on paper is still not a profitable investment at that point. Again, users who invest in items on Epsilon ArtShare don't co-own artworks that are speculated to rise in value over time. Instead, they become partners in the current auctions of items with the sole purpose of receiving a commission when the item sells.
Guys, I feel that your thinking is immaculate. What you're trying to do, I actually applaud. You are trying to democratize what I think is a smoke and mirrors industry. And I personally think a disruption of any market that has got such a stronghold over its suppliers and working artists, boy, does it need breaking. So far, so good. There's a but. That marketplace, I think you have got too many forces running against you. The big collectors, the people who are making millions and millions, the ones who decide that is brilliant and that is rubbish, they don't want 100,000 people buying their art. They are constantly looking for that rarity, and those are the forces I think are against you.
When we source pieces for our collection, it's purely Epsilon ArtShare who purchases and owns each piece. The seller can rest assured that he or she doesn't have to deal with 100,000 people. Once an artwork is listed on our app for investment, it belongs to Epsilon ArtShare entirely, and we have no issue dealing with 100,000 investors. In fact, we love that idea. For collectors interested in buying the piece, they bid on it through an auction process just as they would to buy an item through Christie's or Sotheby's. The number of users who invested in the piece is irrelevant to the buyer, it doesn't affect the sale price, and all that matters to the collector is that the item has that rarity they're looking for. To sum everything up, it really is a combination of three things that makes the Epsilon ArtShare model both innovative and different to other fractional art ownership models, including the one that was featured on Dragon's Den. The first point is that art investment with Epsilon ArtShare is based on art dealing, not speculation. It is much easier for an art investment to be successful that way. The second point is that Epsilon ArtShare makes art investment a much more liquid process than traditional art investment. This advantage is practically unheard of elsewhere. The third point is that because you can invest any amount you like, you can start with a very small amount that feels comfortable for you. This is the benefit of fractional ownership. Thank you so much for staying with me and learning more about what we're trying to do at Epsilon ArtShare. You can download the app from your app store, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Epsilon ArtShare is more than an online auction house and investment platform. You can use it to find out about art events all over the world, locate reputable industry professionals, read informative articles, or simply learn more about fine art and antiques. If you'd like to see more videos, please subscribe to this channel. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, where we always enjoy hearing from our users. We hope to see you there. Thank you.